chair or even chaired a committee. That guy is essentially flying by the seat of his pants, is going to have to unite this unruly conference into something that can legislate. And as Democratic Congressman Sean Casten noted on the House floor this week, it's not going great.
As you know, we operate on a September 30th fiscal year, and here we are 39 days later, and the majority has yet to even propose a way to keep the government open. Last September, kicked the can down the road, kept the government open for 45 days, and in the words of Mr. Santos, that made you all big mad. So you fired your speaker. Now you have a new speaker, but a lot of you are still big mad. So instead of working, we are sitting here this week debating nonsense. So today, we are voting on a bill that would defund the ability of regulators to develop consistent climate accounting rules instead of doing the work of the people. Mr. Speaker, science is real. We have real challenges.
And happy Saturday and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, November 11th, 2023, and the year is nearly over. And I see all the Christmas decorations going up and whatnot. Thanksgiving is only a little bit away, but today is Veterans Day. And we have a real life veteran with us, Val Atkinson. Hey, Val, happy Veterans Day.
Thank you so much, Ed. And I want to say happy Veterans Day to all my fellow veterans out there, wherever you may be.
Yeah, and I really do mean thank you for your service. The military has been an odd place in American history. African Americans have always overrepresented themselves, served the nation through every conflict, including the very first one, the Revolutionary War. The first person killed was a Black man, Crispus Attucks. There's no dispute about that. But there's been heroes in every conflict. And then most Black families have somebody who served in the major conflicts. And that can't be said about everybody. And I'll just leave it at that. And right now, currently, only 1% of the population, Val, is serving in the military. So you get a lot of people who are sycophantic, who wave the flag and talk about the military or whatever and don't really care about them. But we'll save that for a different discussion. What I want to talk about right off the bat today, Val, is the budget deadline is looming. And on the way in the introduction, you saw the new speaker, Mike Johnson, and his shenanigans. Mike Johnson, we talked a little bit about last week, was a backbencher from Louisiana, but he was an election denier. He has a mystery Black son that apparently appeared this week in court in LA with some criminal charges. We'll talk about that later when we talk about Mike Johnson. But I want to talk about the budget deadline, Val. The 17th of November is the deadline. There's a meeting going on as we're recording this with the White House and Mike Johnson. Here's an easy question for you. Will there be a budget deal by November 17th?
I believe it will, Ed. I think it'll be something that the GOP has just got to bite their lip and let it go through. I think they'll find out that the American public is not that naive that they can shut down the government and the public will blame the Democrats, because that's what they're hoping for. Matt Gaetz and those kind of people are thinking, well, we shut down the government and we'll say it's Biden's fault, and that may be worth a few thousand votes for Donald Trump. It's not going to work that way. And once people see it's not going to work that way, and see the harm that it's going to cause to the American economy and the overall budget, they'll make calls and they'll do the right thing, and they'll get the right people in the room to say, hey, let's cut out this shenanigans and let's go to the right place and let's make sure we have a budget. Let's do the CR like it's supposed to be done. And if we want to put another date on it like we did earlier, 60-day, 90-day, or whatever, let's do that. But let's keep things going. So in that respect, I do think that there will be some type of resolution. I don't think that the Republicans are that stupid that they would let things go into default. I can't remember which credit agency it was. I believe it was Moody's.
Moody's, yep.
Moody's, who already said that, hey, you know, things don't look good for you guys. And if we start continuing to get bad credit ratings, you know, what bad credit ratings do, it hikes up the interest. It's just like for us as individuals. You got bad credit, you're going to pay more for a car than I am if I got good credit in the long run, in terms of how much interest you pay, of what your interest rate is. That makes you pay, your monthly payments are going to be higher than mine because they're afraid they won't get their money back, at least on time. So it's just too much to even contemplate. People are already talking about inflation and the affordability and kids being poorer than the parents, and on and on and on. This is stupidity. This is something that can be avoided. We are letting politics get in the way of our morality. So, and it should be the other way around.
Yeah. Well, you know, Val, the other piece of this is the current speaker, Mike Johnson. He's following up on Kevin McCarthy, who was displaced because he did cut a deal with Joe Biden. So earlier this week, the Republicans, or specifically Mike Johnson, talked about this whole notion of what they called a laddered CR, where he was going to split it up in chunks, right, and allow the government to continue working, you know, in 12 different chunks here, and do multiple short-term CRs. And he didn't get any support from the Republicans, and he wasn't getting any support from the Democrats. Nobody was happy about what that whole idea of multiple short-term CRs being a viable solution to this. And the reason for that is it makes no sense. And there was nobody, we've never tried it before. The 17th is the deadline. It needs to be addressed, so on and so forth. So, Val, this whole idea of these laddered CRs, I think you had a different term for it. You know, what was Mike Johnson trying to do when, you know, proposing this sort of stepped, you know, multi-pronged CR approach?
What I said, Ed, that is Mike Johnson's way of having a line item veto. That what a line item veto is, when you can go in and pick out a particular item in the budget and say, no, I don't want that, but I'll take these two over here, and I don't want that one. Presidents have gone to Congress and asked for, Reagan asked for it, and he thought he was going to get it, a line item veto, and none of them have ever gotten it. You don't have a choice to go in and pick out the parts of the budget that you want and you like and you don't like. You approve the entire budget we send you, or you send us something different. And that's what Johnson is hoping, those around him hoping that he can do, to say that we won't have a CR on Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, but we will have a CR on the defense budget, and we'll have a CR on something else. Now, you can't pick and choose that way, and he knows that, but he's trying to use it for a political advantage, to be able to say, we are still after those things that my constituents likes, and we still want to block those things that the other guys want.
Yeah,
and
but
it's not going to happen.
It doesn't look like anybody's following along with it, because one of the hills they were willing to die on this week, Val, was that they were trying to hold up things over a bill that said that in the District of Columbia, employers could fire somebody if they were using contraceptives. And because we know one thing about Mike Johnson is that he is to the far right. He's working on issues like ending abortion rights. And one of the things that he talked about throughout his career was eliminating abortion and contraceptive services altogether. His accountability buddy to keep him from watching porn, Val, is his 17-year-old son. I don't know if you saw the story this week about Mike Johnson's accountability buddy, but let's take a look at it.
With covenant eyes within your home. And so why is that such an effective tool? Why do parents need to put this into their home?
Yeah, that's great question. We probably could have called this more appropriately a war on the darkness of technology, because there are some good things with technology, of course. I mean, you know, the Bible apps we all love, we broadcast our services, you know, on our social media, and there's some very positive things, but there's also, as Clint's pointed out aptly, some really dark things. So Covenant Eyes is the software that we've been using a long time in our household. I first learned about it at, I think, a Promise Keepers event in the early 2000s. I think it was developed in about the year 2000. But it's the largest accountability software that there is, and there's some paperwork out there on the table that I think everybody may have picked up on the way in. If not, go get it. It's a subscription-based. I mean, we don't make any money on this. I'm telling you, we use it. Okay, I'm endorsing it because I'm a user. It's about $15 a month, $16 a month, something like that. And you get up to 10 devices. And what it is accountability software. So men in a church, you know, men's Bible study groups will do it. That's how it's presented at Promise Keepers. But they also mention, hey, when your kids become teenagers, especially if you have boys, dads, they're talking to the guys at this event, you might want to think about doing this with your sons. And so we've been doing that. And so what it does real simply is it has an algorithm and software. It's way above my head how it works, but it scans, you obviously opt into it, but it scans all the activity on your phone or your devices, your laptop, tablet, what have you. We do all of it. And then it sends a report to your accountability partner. So my accountability partner right now is Jack, my son, right? And so he's 17. So he and I get a report of all the things that are on our phones or all of our devices once a week. If anything objectionable comes up, your accountability partner gets an immediate notice. I'm proud to tell you my son is...
So Val, Mike Johnson has an app on his phone that he shares with his son, and it would notify the other if the other one is watching porn. Weird. These people are weird, Val. And then on top of that, his black son emerged this week, or at least the person he claims to have adopted, which we found out a little bit more about him this week, has had perpetual legal problems out in LA. He does say that Mike Johnson did help him do it through a rough patch in his teens, but he still didn't confirm that he was officially adopted by Mike Johnson. And then if you look at his record, he was constantly in and out of jail and constantly has been in and out of legal trouble, mainly over drugs. That's a whole nother matter. I just thought I would remind people who the new speaker is. He has a 17-year-old accountability buddy on pornography, and his supposed adopted black son didn't turn out so well. So let's just leave that at that. We won't even have to talk about that anymore. However, I do want to remind you, you're watching The Deal. This is Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's Saturday, the 11th of November. And you can always subscribe to us on all the different podcast platforms. You can go to thedealwithedclark.com. I'm working on a piece for today that I'll put out later on today or tomorrow on finally my feelings on the Middle East, Val. I've been trying to ignore that as much as possible. Not ignore it, but not really say a lot about it. So we didn't talk about it in our show prep, but I do want to ask you about it since I brought it up before the segment ends. The Hamas is sort of in a no-win situation here, right? The Israelis are not willing to stop shooting. They did agree to some nominal ceasefire, but nothing significant. They say their aim is to completely destroy Hamas. What that means in real terms, Val, is that civilian Palestinians are going to die and have been dying. Right before we came on, I saw a news story about the hospital, the major hospital there in Gaza Strip, saying that they're done. They have no more supplies. Electricity has been off for a sustained period of time. They don't know what they're going to do. So tell me real quick, what's happening in Gaza, and has our approach exacerbated the situation? Have we moved this thing along? Is there anywhere near a resolution there?
I don't think we're anywhere near a resolution. And I think we ought to be clear on a couple of things here, Ed. One is what Israel's primary objective is, regardless of what they are saying and how they are posturing. Their primary objective is to destroy and eliminate anybody who thinks that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. Anybody who doesn't agree with the way Israel conducts their business, anybody who conjures up fear in the hearts and minds of Israelis. You know, that could be the entire Middle East. If you're going to go around saying, hey, this guy is going to grow up to be a Hamas or Hezbollah type soldier, or maybe his son might be if he ever have a son, so I might as well kill him now, and we'll stop that for generations to come. You can't let them do that. Israeli people in general, and I hate to say this, now I'm not talking about Jews. I want to make a distinction here. I'm not talking about all Jews. I'm talking about the Zionists, these Israelis people who have a religious state in the Middle East. That's what it is. It's not a political state. It's a religious state. There are only two religious states on the planet. One is called the Vatican, and we know how that works and why. The other one is Israel. It is for and run by Jews. There is no state for Christians other than the Vatican. There is no state for Islam or Sikhs or Hindu or Buddhists. There's no state for that. These are religions. So this is what people in the Middle East really took umbrage with what the United States and Great Britain did in 1948 to take land that was owned by Palestinians, uproot them and send them someplace else and give that land to make a religious state of Israel. That's what happened here. The Palestinians did nothing to the Jews in Germany, Kristallnacht, and all of those things that happened, Auschwitz, Dachau, all of those places, all of the bad things that happened during the Holocaust and that kind of thing. The Palestinians had nothing to do with that. They didn't say to the United States, bring them over here, I'll give them this land. It had nothing to do with that. The United States and Great Britain said, the Jews have told us that this is where they want to be, because their Torah, their Bible, has said this is where they belong. So whoever is there, you got to go. And I'm giving this land. And now you want these people to love you. And you're afraid because the United States, if you're a Zionist, you're afraid because the United States and Great Britain have put you there, and now you're surrounded by all of these people who don't want you there. And you're so afraid, you feel the only way you can feel safe is to kill everybody that don't like you. That is what you call perpetual war. And it'll be that way until we do something about it. We did something about it in 1948. This was a horrendous social engineering feat that we did. To run somebody out of a land and give it to somebody else, that was social engineering. We can have another social engineering if we like, if we have the gumption, if we have the guts to do it. But I don't think we will. You won't see it in your lifetime, Ed, and you're younger than me.
Well, no, I will not, Val. And here's the other piece to it. And like I said, encourage people to read the piece that I'm working on. The main premise is that there is no real sense that the U.S. wants a solution either. Israel, as it's constituted now, is mainly a stopgap on having certain Muslim countries have control of some strategic areas, right? And having Israel there kind of keeps everybody at bay and forces people like Saudi Arabia to come to the table, because the Saudis don't like the Iranians because they're different kinds of Muslims. And I think we're so reductive in the way we talk about this, right? Everybody says, if you listen to all the American politicians who say they support the state of Israel, they always throw in, well, Iran is causing a problem, but they don't say anything about Saudi Arabia anymore because the Saudis have not shown any interest in wanting to support the Palestinians. The Saudis want to be rich. That's why they're paying for these sports teams and buying these sports teams and all this other stuff, because they know oil is going to run out at some point. They know that electric cars are going to take over. So the Saudis are in a different position. They're amenable and willing to do something, where the Iranians will continue to be our enemies because they're the enemies of the Saudis. But that's a lot to get into, but we won't hold up the show because of it. We'll probably have to bring somebody expert on to talk about Shiism and Sunnis and in the schism between those folks and why they're fighting, and why Saudi Arabia is willing to throw Iran under the bus, because they're enemies. So I hear some music in my ear. So that means we need to take a break. So let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about election night. First Tuesday in November is always election day in the United States, no matter what year it is. And we'll explain that when we get back from the break. But there were some interesting results. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Having diabetes means there's a lot you need to keep track of. Eating healthy, limiting sugary drinks, getting plenty of physical activity, checking your blood sugar throughout the day, and taking your medication. Oh, and balancing all of your other responsibilities too. Thankfully, there's help. Diabetes Self-Management Education and Support, or DSMES, can help you learn strategies to manage your diabetes so you can live a healthier life. DSMES services include a diabetes care and education specialist who works with you to develop a management plan that fits your lifestyle and cultural traditions. When you first find out that you have diabetes, during yearly follow-up visits with your doctor, or when not meeting treatment targets, when complicating factors develop, and when new situations or major life changes affect the way you take care of yourself. Managing blood sugar is key to living well with diabetes. Healthy eating, limiting sugary drinks, staying active, and finding solutions to address life challenges while living with diabetes are the best ways to manage blood sugar.
Ohio, we did it! We did it!
It looks like this is going to, the issue one is going to go down, we don't quite know, maybe 8 to 10%.
After a contentious special election with a $20 million price tag, Ohio voters have rejected issue one. Good evening to everybody. Thanks for joining us. For NBC 4 at 11, I'm Kerry Charles.
And I'm Colleen Marshall. Issue one would have made it more difficult to amend the Ohio Constitution. Right now, with 94% of precincts in, the no vote stands at 56%. Yes vote stands at 44%.
And so
welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson there. It is Saturday, 11th of November. We're happy you decided to spend some time with us. First segment, we were talking about the impending budget deadline, November 17th, and whether or not we're going to have a deal cut to avert a government shutdown. Val says yes. So if you're betting in Vegas and you lay that bet and it doesn't come out, you can see Val Atkinson about that. We also talked about the ongoing troubles in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis there. Please read my piece on the deal with edclark.com. It'll be there Sunday morning about how I feel about it. Whether or not you agree with me or not, I don't really care. That's not the point when I write my pieces. I try to come from a place that's informed and try to get you to think. So please take a look at that. On the way back in, Val, I showed a clip about what happened on Tuesday night. And in the state of Virginia, guess what happened? The Democrats were able to take the House and the Senate. And this rising star, Governor Youngkin, thought that he was going to have complete control over the legislature in Virginia, and now he will not. Now, Virginia is just one state, but it's very important for a lot of reasons. It's kind of like the firewall on abortion, and we're going to talk about abortion too, because it's the last of the southern states that still have reasonable abortion laws. It's also a place where there's a lot of money. A lot of people who give money to a lot of corporations are in Northern Virginia that give money to Democratic candidates nationally. You know, they're based now in Northern Virginia. It's a very booming and burgeoning area. And like I said, they were able to stranglehold Governor Youngkin, who everybody was saying, or a lot of people were saying, was going to be the savior for the Republicans, right? He was going to be probably the next guy up in line in 2028. So, Val, you know some people from Virginia. I think you actually lived in the Tidewater area for a large part of your life. And you maybe even went to school in a little town called Norfolk. So tell us about what happened in Virginia and why it's important, what happened Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, I did go to school in a little small town in Virginia called Portsmouth. I went to primary school there, secondary school, and because I was a homebody, didn't want to go too far. When it was time to go to college, I went right across the little Elizabeth River to a place called Norfolk State. And so I have a lot of background there. I got family still in that area, tons and tons of friends that are still there. We have something, our sub-community is called Brighton in Portsmouth. And the first Saturday of each month, we get together for breakfast at a Cracker Barrel there in Chesapeake, Virginia. And I've never seen so many octogenarians in one place in my life. We're all old now, and we all talk about things that old folks talk about. But yeah, I go way back. One of my buddies that I played high school ball with, he is a friend of the president pro tem of the Virginia Senate. And she is a well-respected legislator. And I called her because we attended high school together. I called her to congratulate her, and she had to put me on hold for a while before she could take my call. I learned that the reason she put me on hold, she was talking to two of her lady friends, one by, I think you know both of them, Ed, one by the name of Nancy Pelosi, and the other one was named Kamala Harris. So I think I took second seat to those two ladies. And I was glad to have Senator Lucas to call me back, get back in contact with me and accept my congratulations for the victory in Virginia. But it was an awesome night. There were a lot of expectations not fulfilled on the GOP side, a lot of pleasant surprises on the Democrat side. And according to people that I know in Virginia, they are looking forward to great things to come. It's going to be, this portends to spread to other locales, other states. So I think the Democrats have reason to be looking up after this particular race that we had last Tuesday.
Yeah, you know, we had talked about North Carolina's gerrymandering mess that the Republicans have created here, and the potential to wreak havoc, especially at the state legislative level, the General Assembly, which now it looks like Virginia is going to be able to avoid. But North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and some other places where the Republicans have a stranglehold over the legislature, it doesn't look so good. However, there is one issue that seems to be helping the Democrats across the country is the whole notion of what's a reasonable date that a woman could have abortion services. And throughout the country, the Republicans have continually lost on that issue. In Ohio, they had a referendum that would codify some abortion rights, and that passed. And when you looked at counties that passed the legislation, even some that were overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, that measure won. can we make anything of it? Is it just that it's one of those crazy midterm election things where nobody comes to vote? Because if you look at the number of turnout in Ohio, I think there were 1,400,000 less than in the last general election, right? And that maybe people just stayed home, and it just didn't register with them. They didn't feel like it was that important. It doesn't really mean that the Democrats have a leg up. It means that the Republicans weren't energized. How do you read what happened in Ohio then?
Well, some politicians said the Democrats had a couple of sexy issues on the ballot. They talked about the Dobbs decision or abortion and legalization of marijuana. And a lot of people came out because they were excited about these two things. Women came out because they were fearful of having Dobbs implemented in their particular states. Women and men came out because they had been pro-marijuana for umpteen years, just about since they were teenagers, some of them. And so this drove a lot of folks to the poll. Traditionally, during a midterm election, we don't have the type of numbers that we would have in a general election. And traditionally, in a midterm election, you find that the party out of power, particularly out of power in the White House, is the party that normally picks up seats. So to have a legislature like Virginia to flip it from Republican to Democrat is really astounding. And Ohio did well. Kentucky did well in their gubernatorial election. So I think it was about the business of having sexy issues more so than just regular turnout.
Yeah.
And I think the issue of marijuana and the issue of abortion are going to be live and well next year in 2024 when we have our general elections for a national office and for state offices. And I think that Republicans haven't figured that out yet. They think that people are going to forget about that and think about the race issues surrounding Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is here to protect my whiteness and my culture and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's what they're banking on. But people are going to the polls now and says, no, there are some things that are just as important, if not more so, than your whiteness. So
there you go.
See you at the polls.
Yeah. I want to remind you, you're listening to The Deal. That's Val Atkinson explaining to us why the Republicans got some trouble over the abortion issue. And you did mention Kentucky. I do want to say a little bit about Kentucky because Mitch McConnell is the senator there. Rand Paul is the other senator. Their House and Senate are controlled by Republicans, but Andy Beshear won. And he was running against a Negro candidate for the Republicans. And the reason why I call him a Negro candidate, he's a throwback. He's a Black Republican. And I'm not sure, Val, that these Black Republicans who run for statewide office or even run for any federal office, when they lose, everybody around them white wins and then they lose. Why they haven't figured it out yet, that there's just not a base of people on the Republican side that want a Negro in office, even if that Negro will supplicate himself to everything. And this guy, Cameron, the attorney general, was a Trump sycophant to the point that it was nauseating. And so Trump was completely behind this guy, and he loses. We didn't talk about this before we came on, but is there a future for Mr. Cameron, or is he going to go the path of all the other Negroes in the Republican Party who get sat down after they realize that they can't win a statewide race like governor. He was attorney general, so he did win that. But he ain't gonna be governor. He definitely ain't gonna be president or vice president, is he?
He's not going to be either of those things, Ed. It's a lesson, to answer your question directly. It's a lesson that it seems that people have to learn themselves. You know, there used to be a time when you could learn things vicariously. You wouldn't have to go through it yourself. You see somebody else do it and you say, hey, I don't want to touch that stove. I saw him bring his hand back and it was all blistered and burnt. We don't seem to be able to do that. In North Carolina here, we have the same situation brewing, Ed. We have a lieutenant governor by the name of Robinson, and he's up against Josh Stein, and all indications are that he's going to lose to Josh Stein. And some of those people that voted for him for lieutenant governor, some of those people who are voting for other council of state members who happen to be Republican and white, they are voting for them, but they won't vote for him. I mean, when are you going to learn the lesson? They don't like you. They like you when they can control you. Voting you in as lieutenant governor is nothing because you have no power. They don't mind doing that. And by the way, the only reason they want you up there waving the MAGA and the Republican banner is not to attract black voters to the Republican Party. They know that's a losing deal. They are using you to attract white liberals and progressives to the Republican Party, hoping some of these white progressives would say, you know, the Republicans ain't that bad. They voted for a black guy to be lieutenant governor. You know, they got black people at the rally. Look right to the left and immediately to the right of the speaker. You'll always find a black guy at any GOP rally, you know? And that's why they're doing that. And you're so stupid, you ain't figured it out yet. You believe that stuff, that they really like you because they think you can win and you're different than the other Negroes. And they support you and they're going to make you governor. Mm-hmm. But you got to learn that. Tim Scott's got to learn that. All of these guys got to learn that message. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here and bring up a subject that you haven't, Ed. And I saw a glimpse of the debate the other night, or the preparatory arrangements for the debate. And Tim Scott walks out on stage with his white girlfriend. And I guess that's supposed to mean, well, you see, I'm not a closet homo. I actually have a girlfriend, and here she is. And I was reading the body language of both of those guys. She looked like she was one of his staffers, and she acted like she was one of his staffers. They did not have any kind of touching, feeling they did not look like they were together at all. They may have been, and it may have just been me, but this guy has got a lot of work to do. Maybe he can go to some of the relatives of Herman Cain and get some advice from them as to how do you come back from the dead? How do you be a Negro, a sycophant for black-hating Republicans and still come back and be a black man? How do you do that, Tim Scott? I don't know.
Well, you didn't see this, Val. I was playing the clip of Tim Scott and his girlfriend as we were talking. So if you're lucky enough to actually see the video version of the podcast, you will see Tim Scott's supposed girlfriend. And again, whether she is or not, I highly doubt it. But that's just me. And I'm glad you brought up the Republican debate, because I feel like it's a waste of time. But if they want to do it, it's on them. What's clear to me, to wrap that up then, since you brought it up, is that Nikki Haley is supposedly the reasonable one in the pack. She's still not palatable to the rest of the country. She's not even palatable to the rest of the Republicans. So it's an exercise in futility, and it looks like they're going to have a convicted felon as their nominee, unless something drastic happens. And I hear music in my ear. So that means we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the potentially convicted felon, Donald Trump. And we also want to talk about young voters real quick. And then Eric Adams in New York may have some problems that I want to talk about too. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
So as a technical sergeant, E6.
I served in Vietnam in 1969.
I am an U.S. Army veteran.
Have you ever helped a fellow veteran?
Of course.
Yes.
Try to always be there for each other.
I do my best reaching out to my brothers and sisters in arms.
Have you ever asked for help yourself?
It's always tough, right? I can't say that I have. I mean,
If you don't have someone to kind of help you guide those thoughts, it can be really bad.
Eventually, you just can't deal with it on your own.
I guess it's a part of the military too, right? Service before self.
It was drilled in, service before self.
And you start to question, maybe people would be better off without me, When you realize that you're not alone, once you take that first step, there's so much support.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's November the 11th. I'm still laughing because Val and I, we were talking about our neighbor to the south, Tim Scott, and his girlfriend. And again, I don't care what he does in his personal life. I think it's sort of short-sighted on his part to think that bringing somebody out on stage at this point is going to lend more support to his effort to become the Republican nominee, which brings me to a subject that I do want to talk about. So we'll leave Tim Scott alone. I want to talk about young voters, and there was a couple exit polls I saw where not a lot of young people voted across the board, but they did vote in some significant numbers when abortion was, one of the key issues. However, there were some other polls earlier in the week that said that there's just no support almost for Joe Biden amongst young people. A lot of it over what's going on in the Middle East, but a lot of people saying, well, he's too old or he's not doing what he said he was going to do, whatever, blah, blah, blah. All at the same time, Val, the economy is fine. I saw when I pulled up the gas station this morning, gas was $2.76. So it's under $3. Construction is just crazy. I've been in DC nonstop for the last 6 weeks, and construction is crazy in DC, Northern Virginia, in Maryland, in the suburbs, in Richmond, in Norfolk, in Tidewater area, in Raleigh, in Greensboro, in Charlotte, in Nashville. Memphis, all the places I've been this year. So I don't get this disconnect, this whole thing where they're doing these polls and saying that Joe Biden has a very low approval rating and Donald Trump may even be beating him in these battleground states. My take on it, Val, is that the media, which we're not a part of anymore in the traditional sense, right? That traditional media loves the horse race. They want to see this as a conflict and, will Joe Biden be able to overcome Donald Trump and whatever? Donald Trump is indicted 91 times. He is losing. He's already lost one state case in New York, and he's about to lose another case, the civil case. He's already lost. They're just trying to figure out what they're going to take away from him at this point. How the hell are we still here at this juncture where we're talking about Joe Biden's approval rating?
We are talking about Joe Biden's approval rating, Ed, simply because we have digressed to the point that we will accept any kind of poll from anybody about anything. And one thing that I remember from poll taking and surveying and all those kinds of things, that the methodology is the key to whether the poll is believable or not. I learned way back then, Ed, that the only kind of poll that I want to hear you talk about are something that's called representative polls. Now, what a representative poll, and I hope I don't get too far down in the weeds, but a representative poll is when you take, for an example, the 4th Congressional District in North Carolina, and you take a look at the demographics, say 20% black, 65, 70% white, 10% something else, and you make your poll subjects match that representation of that particular district, okay? And go down and match the demographics as far as you can through race, gender, education, income, or whether or not people have served in the military or not, since this is Veterans Day. You match the demographics as close as you can to the demographics of that particular district. And now when you do a survey, chances are you have really gotten to the meat of the problem, and you are getting samples from those people that represent that district. Another type of representative survey or a poll is when you talk about people who have a long history of voting. In the polls, they call them likely voters. Well, there are going to be a lot of first-time voters. How are you going to depict that? How are you going to measure that? A lot of likely voters can't vote anymore because they have deceased. You know, there are so many things wrong with these just average polling processes, these blind polling processes, that is catch as catch can. I don't even pay them any mind anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. You might as well go down to Button a Prisoner and take a poll down there. So who do they think the next mayor of Durham ought to be? And they can't vote in that election. It doesn't matter, Ed. People are putting too much credence in polls that are being taken by people who are doing what we call push polling. They are determining the answers by the way they phrase the questions to the subjects. It's called push polling. And by the time they do all of that, they skirt representation, they do push polling, and they forget about demographics and geographics and all of those kinds of things. And then they come out with this poll saying, hey, Trump's leading Biden in all of the battleground states by double digits. I could do a poll doing the same thing, saying Val Atkins is going to hit the lottery 10 times in a row starting in January, right? Everybody else thinks I could go and make that happen if you want to believe it. So I know I went all around the barn to say this, Ed, that people ought not get upset about polls. The only poll that matters is the one that's taken on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November.
Yeah.
That's the only one that matters.
Yeah. Well, you know, here's a knock on to this, Val. There's this guy in West Virginia that you really like. He says that he's not going to run for Senate anymore. So let's take a look at that.
About a minute. But my dad said that he would support me running if I made a vow to serve all the people, friend or foe, and not just myself. That promise made to my dad all those years ago has been my guiding light. I've never cared about where good ideas came from, and I never blame one side for creating a problem, nor believed that only one side could fix them. When America is at her best, we get things done by putting country before party, working across the aisle, and finding common ground. Many times this approach has landed me in hot water, but the fight to unite has been well worth it. Today, West Virginia is attracting more investment, opportunity, and jobs than it has in decades. Here at home and across the country, we are building more roads, bridges, manufacturing plants, and energy infrastructure than almost any time in America's history. After months of deliberation and long conversation with my family, I believe in my heart of hearts that I have accomplished what I set out to do for West Virginia. I have made one of the toughest decisions of my life. and decided that I will not be running for re-election to the United States Senate. But what I will be doing is traveling the country and speaking out to see if there is an interest in creating a movement to mobilize the middle and bring America.
Val, your buddy Joe Manchin, who has caused us a lot of consternation. I can say I don't care for him very much. I don't know him personally. I just know that he has caused much more trouble than he's been worth. He's walked around, he and Kristen Sinema, saying that they were Democrats and then refused to caucus with the Democrats at some important times when they really needed them. One of those important times would be to get rid of the filibuster if they would just, get in line with the rest of the Democrats. But they both say they don't want to do that. But finally, Joe Manchin says he's not going to run for Senate again. Why is he not running for Senate, Val? What did he see that said to him that he needed to hang this up?
Well, I think he got tired of being pushed and pulled by Democrats and taken for granted by Republicans. And it was just too much on him and his family. And he just got tired of it. He was in a no-win situation because the constituency that put him in power in West Virginia, they put him there because they wanted a conservative kind of guy who didn't take a lot of mess from people who looked like you and wasn't going to vote along with progressives and liberals and that sort of thing. And that's the kind of guy they got. And now he just happened to be a Democrat, right? But he said he was caucusing with the Democrats, meaning that you could count him in terms of getting the majority so we could determine who the leader was going to be. But he was going to vote with his own mind, and he wasn't going to vote with them for things like the filibuster and stopping Rule 22 and things of that nature. I think he just got tired of it, and it says, I'm going my way. One of the things he asked people way back when this thing first started, well, guys, if I'm causing problems, what do you want me to do? You want me to leave the Democrat Party? I can leave the party tomorrow if you want me to. And they said, oh, no, don't do that. Don't leave the Democratic Party because we don't have that margin advantage yet. And so he just got tired. He says, hey, if you don't like the way I vote and that kind of thing, and I don't want to be a Republican, I'm going to the House right now.
Yeah, well, I'm glad he's going to the House. And the other thing I'm glad of is that the Republicans put up such a bad candidate in Georgia so that Raphael Warnock, made it so that we didn't have to worry about Joe Manchin all the time and Kristen Sinema. But, hey, God bless him. Hopefully he can play with his grandkids or something. I don't know. I'm just glad that he's gone. I think he was much more trouble than he's worth. I hope he doesn't try to do this no labels thing that they were talking about, maybe putting up somebody as a third party candidate. I think a no labels candidate actually would probably help Joe Biden, depending on who it is, right? Because we know that Hillary Clinton would have been president had it not been for the couple of thousands of votes in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for Jill Stein, who I think was a plant from the Russians. Now, I know that sounds conspiratorial, but just months before she decided to run, she was seen in Russia with Mike Flynn, who ended up being one of the people on Donald Trump's staff. Why was she there? Nobody's ever explained why Jill Stein was in Russia at a dinner with Mike Flynn or whatever. Could have just been happenstance, right? Coinky-dink. But I think not. And also back to the whole poll thing, if you believe polls, then Hillary Clinton would have been in her second term by now, because the polls did not show Donald Trump winning, but it also didn't show Joe Biden winning the last time. So let's take those with a grain of salt. Before we run out of time, Val, I did see something interesting this morning. I saw that the the FBI took Eric Adams' electronic devices. Eric Adams is the Black mayor of New York City. Can you tell me anything about this story? Because it kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, well, Eric Adams's staff, one of his staff workers on the campaign fundraising side, is being looked at by the authorities for some work she's been doing with the Turks. And they're concerned that it may not be all legal. No charges have been filed yet. They're just investigating right now. And the investigation took another slight turn a couple of days ago, when they went and got a warrant to search the mayor's house and get his electronic devices and take them with them. And you know what they're going to do with them, because you're an IT guy. They're going to scour that. They'll find everything that's on there. And so Eric Adams is not smiling so much lately. And only thing he said now is, I tell my staff to follow the law. Every question, he keeps saying that, I tell my staff to follow the law. And I'm concerned, his body language, his voice tone, everything says that he is not looking forward to what the FBI may find on those devices that they took, and how they may share that with the public. Yeah. And we'll have to wait and see. But Eric Adams, hope he doesn't turn out like Mr. Kilpatrick in Detroit.
Yeah. Kwame Kilpatrick actually spent some time in prison, and it was pardoned by Donald Trump, of all people. Get out of here. Anyway, so Val, before we run out of time, again, I just want to mention, Veterans Day. Make sure that you thank a veteran for their service, and not that sort of platitude that a lot of so-called right-wing people do, because they don't have anybody in their family that served, or they haven't served themselves. It's like the guy who drives around with his motorcycle with the POWMIA sticker, and he wasn't in Vietnam, all right, or they're going around stealing valor from other folks. I mean, it happens amongst those people a lot. It's the same kind of guys that end up being a police officer who over police or whatever, but again, thank a real veteran, and also, if you got somebody serving, make sure you call and check on them and that kind of thing. Like I always do, Val, I ask you, well, first, did you go get something free today? Because, they give veterans stuff free on Veterans Day. And then, and you got anything else you want to talk about before we leave?
Well, I didn't go get anything free because I had a lot of chores to do around the house. My wife wasn't playing this thing that is Veterans Day and you can have the day off. I didn't get any time off, but I didn't make it out to get anything done. And I don't know if I will or not, but I normally use Veteran Day to call as many of my old Army buddies as I can think of, and just to say hi and how you doing and that sort of thing. And we talk for a couple of minutes, and then I call the next guy. So that's how I celebrate Veterans Day. And I would ask folks, if you want to say something about thank you for your service, please don't say it to me. I don't like that anymore. If you want to thank me for my service, convince your son, your nephew, your niece, your daughter, your grandchild, whomever, to go down and join the military. We don't have a draft anymore. You got to join up. It's voluntary. Convince somebody that's close to you to go join the military, and then you convince me that you are honest and truthful when you said thank you for your service.
But there you go. Because a lot of times they just want other people's children to go, or other people's nephews and nieces, so I think that's a good thing. But anyway, Val, we're out of time. So as I always do, I always say go out and do something good for somebody today, but particularly do something for a veteran if you can. If you know an older veteran that needs some help with anything, make sure you're looking after them. In the meantime, come back with us next time for another edition of The Deal. Thanks a lot. Bye.